Hi guys, were Labour being dishonest during the election campaign? So if we cast our minds back to before the election, the Conservatives were downplaying or ignoring any idea that public services were on their knees. Labour, on the other hand, were saying that if they were privileged with power, they would face a massive task to fix 14 years of rot. Now, we all knew things were bad, but Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has come out in the last few days to claim that things are even worse than first believed. She says that there's a £20 billion black hole in the public finances. Is she being dishonest? Well, the answer is not a simple yes or no, as Paul Johnson from the IFS points out here.
What do you think when you see Labour saying that they weren't warned about how bad things are?
Well, of course, they knew to a large degree how bad things are in terms of the public finances. We and many others have made it very clear that that it was going to be very hard to avoid cuts over the next few years, given the proposals made by the previous government. It's also been very clear that, for example, things like children's social care, the prisons system, the court system, NHS waiting lists have been in a terrible state. We also knew that there were going to be big demands on public sector pay. So at the highest broad level, yes, of course, they knew, broadly speaking, how bad things were. I've no doubt they have discovered some specific issues, and particularly about how tough things are this year or immediately, which wouldn't have been quite so evident from the public pronouncement. So my guess is that that's what they're going to focus on Monday.
Some are even going so far as to suggest that the Chancellor's been dishonest. Do you think that's fair?
I think at a high level, the new government was well aware they were coming in facing a really difficult position in terms of the scale of problems facing the public services. There is no doubt that having taken over at the Ministry of Justice and the Home Office and the Department of Education and so on, they will have seen some things that they didn't know, and it may well be that things are even worse than they imagined. But there's no question that they knew that things were going to be difficult. My guess is they found that they are even more difficult and even more immediately than they had quite appreciated.
So he's been asked twice and he's responded in pretty much the same way. You know, the new Labour administration knew things were bad, but it's possible that they looked into the books and discovered, well, actually things are even worse than that. So while the Tories and certain people in the media are attacking Labour over the idea that they were not being honest, well, it's a bit of both, perhaps. Now, if Labour did know how bad things were, why would they not have said this during the election campaign? I think it's for political reasons. They didn't want to say, look, we're going to have to rebuild everything from scratch. The Tories have destroyed everything over the last 14 years and we have to rebuild everything. I think that would have scared off the voters. And of course, they would have been asked, how are you going to pay for all of this? So the media would have asked them, the Conservatives would have asked them, and it would have been extremely difficult. They'd have to come out and say, look, we're going to have to raise taxes. So in a sense, probably they were saying, look, we're going to make some minor changes if we get into power. And then if things are even worse than that, then what we're going to do is we're going to have to raise taxes. So I think this is the sort of line they were taking during the election campaign. But in reality, they realized, yes, we're going to have to spend a huge amount of money. We're going to have to raise a huge amount of money in order to fix public services. But we can't say that to the public because that would turn off a lot of voters. Or it would at least give the Conservatives and the right wing some ammunition to use against us. So can we put this down to being dishonest? Well, we can put it down to being political. And if there's a difference between political reality and dishonesty, well, I think it's up to those who are interpreting it. But it's sure that the public services are an absolute disaster. They have to be rebuilt, and you'll have to raise taxes. Rachel Reeves has talked about a £20 billion black hole. This is a huge amount of money that has to be recouped in some way. And raising taxes on the richest in society is probably the best way to do that. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.